Welcome to the Forge Tutorials Maya Masterclass. In this video we are going to discuss how the hierarchy and group systems work inside Maya. To set up a hierarchy or make a group, you need to go to your outliner as we discussed in our last video. So let's open the outliner. And in the outliner you can see I have named every object in my scene. So it's easier for me to set up hierarchies and make groups of objects that I want to connect. So let's set up a basic hierarchy. Right now everything in our scene is independent. That means everything has its own pivot and moving that object will not affect the other objects. Right now we have in our scene a merry-go-round, and what we want to happen is when we rotate the base, I want everything to rotate with it. But I don't want to join all of these objects, I'd still want them to be independent. So in order to do that we need to set up an hierarchy. Right now we have 5 types of object in our scene. The first one being the nuts and bolts that attach the railings to the base. Then we have the base disc and the center disc. After that we have our railings, and then we have our center pole. Now in order to make sure that everything rotates, when we rotate our base disc, I'm gonna set up a simple hierarchy. First we need to connect our bolts to our railings. So let's middle click drag on our bolts. So you can see that when we put our mouse over another object while holding the middle mouse button, it shows us this box around that object, and when we release our middle mouse click, that object that we dragged is gonna disappear and a plus sign is gonna appear next to the object that we dropped it on. When we click on that plus object, you can see that now both of our objects are in a child-parent relationship. Now what that means is that when you rotate your parent, the child is gonna move with that object. But when you move the child, it's not gonna affect the parent. So let's do the same thing to our other bolts. Bolt 2 goes into railing 2, bolt 3 goes into railing 3, and bolt 4 goes into railing 4. Now all of our bolts are connected to our railings. Now what we want is we want all of our railings connected to our base disc. So when we rotate our base disc, everything rotates with it. So let's Control Shift and select all of the railings and middle click drag and drop it on the base disc. So now if we select our base disc, you can see everything gets selected with it, and we rotate our base disc, everything also rotates with it. This method is really helpful if you're trying to create simple mechanical rigs, and child parenting and grouping is also a method that is used in rigging. One thing you should also note is that when you rotate a parent, you can see in the channel box the parent has the rotation and the translation, rotation and scale of the children of that object remains default. So now you don't have to manage the rotation, translation in every object. It is a lot more easier to manage the translate, rotate and scale of a single object than handling the translate, rotate and scale of all of these objects at once. So now that we know about the hierarchy, let's talk about the groups. If you want to group 2 or more objects together, just select those objects. You can either select them inside the viewport or you can select them through the outliner, and you can go to your edit menu and group them. That is your shortcut for groups, so you can select them and press Ctrl G, or you can group a single object as well just by clicking on a single object and then pressing Ctrl G. Groups have this icon in front of them, so it's easier for you to identify them. You can imagine groups as an empty container. You can use group to better organize your scene, or you can use groups to give a lot of things a single pivot point. For example, if you want to move all of these things together, we can group them, and now we have a single pivot to move all of these objects together. Now this pivot does not affect the other object's pivot. If we select our base disc, it has its own pivot. If we select our railings, it has its own pivot. If you want to select a group from the viewport, just click on the object and press the up arrow key, and it's going to select the whole group to which that object belongs to. So you don't have to go to the outliner to select a group, so you can simply do that from the viewport as well. You can also ungroup an existing group by clicking on your group and go back to your edit menu and select ungroup from here. That's gonna extract everything that was in the group and delete the group folder. You can also put things in group by middle click dragging your objects over a group, and that's gonna put everything in the group. And vice versa, you can drag everything you wanna remove from the group and drag that outside the group, but the group icon will remain if you do it this way, and you can simply delete that group container by hitting the delete key on your keyboard. So now that you know how to create hierarchies and set up groups, I'm gonna end this video right here. And as always, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, drop a comment. And if you want to support me directly, as always, the link to my merch store and my Patreon is in the description down below. And I'll see you in the next video.